I'm Robert Loggia Wild. Hello. Well, I picked Psycho 2 to make you watch. One of my favorite scary movies, one of my favorite sequels, and you had not seen it before, so I was really curious where you were going to land on this one. I feel like this is a movie that was pretty divisive for a while, then in recent years has been appreciated a lot more and is now a lot more acclaimed, but doesn't mean you liked it. But before we get deep into spoilers, just real quick, kind of general, because you've just watched this movie. What were your expectations going into this, and what are your first impressions before we get deep into spoilers? Mm, interesting. Hmm. Interesting. Okay. Curious. Yeah, I don't know if this because we'll probably eventually get to the sequels. That's not gonna be next on the docket, but we'll probably go through the rest of the franchise on the channel eventually. I don't know if they'll improve or lessen the ending for you. I also could see another viewing improving the ending for you, but I don't know. We'll get more into spoilers in a minute, but yeah, for sure. But I love the setup. If you haven't seen this film, just go watch it. I don't. How did you watch this movie? Yeah, how did you watch this? Oh, okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure if this was still on Peacock or something. I know these were all on Peacock last year, but they may have taken them off. Yeah, thanks streaming. But I love the setup of this movie, and it's a setup that only works when like by them making this when they did. Because if this was a rushed out for some reason, if this was a rushed out, oh, we got to capitalize on Psycho sequel made like back in the 60s, then the setup doesn't work at all. Uh, yes. But what we get, I think, is pretty believable where it's 22 years later and Norman's cured. They're letting him go to kind of start his life over. And I really like where we start with him as a character. My favorite thing about this movie is that Norman, your crazy your crazy twist villain from the original, like oh my god, which just shocked everybody in 1960. At the end of that film, is a complete weird monster. At least in the time that that movie was made. You get to this film and he's your protagonist, and you're rooting for him, or at least I am when I'm watching it. Because I think the movie does an excellent job at making you sympathize with him, even though you've seen the first movie. I think that's great. Oh, Don't Breathe. Oh, okay, both. Just can you check? I just checked the YouTube stream. I'm not sure if we can hear our audio. Um,
Hello? Okay. There we go. Okay, so to rewind, this is Halloween 2, but better than Halloween 2. I like this movie quite a bit up until the ending. I have many questions about the end, and it's crazy how good this is because I can't think of any other movies quite like this where it's like a decades later sequel directed by a real director, especially in
yeah,
the 80s.
yeah. This is a movie made by people who clearly love Psycho and want to make it. But you also know, like, okay, this started as okay, slashers are really big. It's the early '80s. It's like somebody at Universal was like, "What do we got? What do we got to capitalize on?" But they just happened to. And I know for a minute this was almost like a TV movie. I know they were considering getting like Christopher Walken to play Norman Bates before they got Anthony Perkins back on board, which would have been interesting. But I'm really happy with what we got, and that we happened to hire people who actually knew what they were doing for the most
Yeah.
part and treated this material seriously. And thank you, Kyle, in the live chat. I'm glad I checked that, but I'm glad also Kyle confirmed that audio is working now. Glad we caught that early.
Yeah, thanks for that. We only lost about like 5 minutes, 5, 6 minutes, something like that. That's not bad. Welcome
Mm.
in, Kyle.
But
So what made you pick this other than just wanting me to see it? Like, how did you discover this film?
so it was with friends who showed it to me. It got to be 10 or 12 years ago now, and I went in pretty cold. I don't even know if I was aware that there were Psycho sequels. It's the type of thing you hear about, like, oh, there's a Psycho sequel. That's probably terrible. Why would they do that? So you go in with like the lowest expectations, and was like, oh my god, this is really good. And this at the time for me kind of filled a niche, kind of filled a void that other movies would go on to, because I see this movie years before I start getting into like the Scream franchise, and that Scream would help solidify. Oh, this is just one of my favorite horror subgenres, the slasher who done it. Because
Mhm.
I didn't see a lot of those growing up, or like when I was a teenager, kind of first getting into these horror movies. It's like, oh, this is just two genres I really like spliced together. Because for me, this isn't a boring movie that's just padding time to get to the kills. Like, this is actually an engaging story and an engaging mystery, and that's a lot of the entertainment for me
Yeah,
when I'm watching this.
yeah. The whole like, did Norman do it or did someone else?
Mhm.
So, are you satisfied with the conclusion? Because maybe I missed something, but I wasn't sure if the movie was saying. And we're getting into full spoilers here for a 40-year-old movie. I wasn't sure if they were saying that that girl did it all, or just like he got lucky that it made it look like she killed them.
It's the latter. What I love, and again, I'm sure this plays a lot better on repeat viewing. When you get to the final monologue, it's kind of satirizing the first movie, which had that infamous exposition dump explaining everybody's motives. This guy at the end of this movie is like, all right, so what happened was this mom and her daughter went fucking nuts and killed all these people, and poor Norman, thank God we got there. But we as the audience know, oh, this is all bullshit. This is not how it went down, which is why you need that extra scene with Mrs. Spool at the end, the old lady coming to the house telling her side of the story. Because now we're kind of jumping all over the place. Because you did finish the movie, right? You got to the
Yeah,
part with the shovel. Okay.
yeah.
So so for all the actual on-screen kills you saw, that was her. But other characters just
Okay,
weren't aware
I
of it.
kind of okay. I was wondering about that. What caught me off guard is they have that whole speech where she's like, "I'm actually your mom, but
Mhm.
I gave you up to Norma," and that was weird. I wasn't sure if I was supposed to believe that or what was
Yeah,
happening there.
and again, for a lot of reasons, this can play better on second
Mhm.
viewing because the issue with this as a mystery is Mrs. Spool as a character. You don't really get to see much. You don't really get to know her, so you're not like paying. She's just this old lady at this diner in a couple scenes. That's the tricky thing about a whodunit movie is if you give her too much screen time, then she's a suspect and you're
Mhm.
paying more attention. But then on first view, I do remember on first viewing being like, "Wait, who was that?"
I
That
had
was
that. I was
kind of
like,
an
"What
issue.
are we doing?" Like,
Yeah, so if you're taking her word for it, and this ending, by the way, like you're not, it is the most contentious part of the movie for fans. The idea that okay, so this is really Norman's mom, and that Norma in the first one was actually his aunt, who raised him. That's a twist a lot of people don't like. For me personally, it doesn't change the movie too much. The idea is just madness runs in this family's blood, and oh, this is actually his mother. And you get to the very end, and the point is just resetting everything so everything's comes full circle. That's ultimately why I come out liking it because it's a tragedy. I
Mhm.
know you like a good dark ending, and everybody else is none the wiser, but we know, oh fuck, Norman's crazy again. He's
Mhm.
talking to mom. He's got her in the window. For me, this is one of my favorite, like, oh, everything's come full circle endings, and it's really tragic.
I like that idea at the very ending because yeah, I did like that where he and I laughed a little when he hit her over the head with a
Yes.
shovel. No, I just yeah, I'm not a big fan of that as a idea of the retcon.
Mhm.
Just because I think it does kind of maybe not hurt, but that first movie is so much about his relationship with his mother.
Yeah.
It feels very CW to be in the sequel. That wasn't really his mom. This is his mom, who also happens to be crazy.
Hmm. Yeah, again, I'm of two minds about it because for me, with the first movie, it doesn't change the first movie too much because at the end of the day, okay, Norma still raised him. All the events of the first movie still happened. It's just, for all intents and purposes, that was still his mother. She still raised him, and that stuff still played out. So it doesn't change the movie too much. And what's really funny, since we're on this ending and that retcon, that is the first idea for this movie. That is where the script starts. Of for you, you know, like this CW weird retcon. The first idea for the sequel is, well, what if Mother wasn't actually his mother? What if there was this other lady we didn't know about, and Norma's still, so Mother's still alive? And then the whole script is kind of written backwards from that twist. So it's kind of funny that the most divisive, kind of least liked element of this movie is the first idea. They just happen to make a good movie on top of it, in my opinion.
That
I find that
that
interesting.
actually kind of makes sense. I don't know. That plays that would be like to me if you got Friday the 13th Part Two. It's like, oh, Pamela Voorhees wasn't really his mom
Mhm.
the whole time. Here's this crazier lady that's actually his mom. Um, but no, I think my favorite character ends up being the younger girl.
Mary.
Yeah, Mary. I
Yeah, let's
really
talk about
liked
Mary
her
for
and
a
kind
minute.
of her struggle. Um, I was rooting for
Well,
her, and then she
yeah,
died.
yeah, no, she does. And she is played by Meg Tilly, the younger sister of Jennifer Tilly, as you mentioned to me earlier. And this is the only thing I've ever seen her in, so I don't have a lot of opinions on her as an actress, but I really like her in this. I think she's sympathetic.
I
And
think she's
now
kind of great in this.
I think so too. I like her scenes with Norman a lot. That relationship is so weird and awkward. And the first twist of the movie, and I wonder if you saw this coming or how you felt about it. Because for me, the first act of this movie, she's like really weirdly trusting of Norman and like going to his house. And I'm like, okay, this is kind of convenient. What are we doing here? And then you get the twist that her mother is actually Lila, Marion's sister from the first movie. Did you see that twist coming, and how did you feel about
I
that element of the
didn't.
movie?
The thing that caught me off guard in the first act, and because I was just taking it on its own terms, is I thought it was kind of funny that the reason her boyfriend didn't told her not to come home is he'd moved somebody else in while she was still living there. I was like, what?
Yep.
But I
Yep.
was like, oh, so this is going to be one of those like heightened crazy movies. But now that then the twist comes, I was like, oh, she probably made it all up.
Yep.
Okay.
Because what this movie is really about is that her mother, Lila, you know, the sister of Marion in the original, who is now Lila Loomis because she married Sam Loomis from the first movie,
And this
and
movie
he has since
realizes
died.
that he is so unimportant that they kill him
Yeah,
off screen.
yeah, he's dead. So don't worry about it. But now they have a daughter, Mary, and it just really works thematically with this idea of overbearing mothers and that weird relationship, and that how that event of the first movie kind of screwed Lila up and the choices she's making. Because what this movie's really about is Lila's pissed about Norman getting out because of killing her sister, understandably so. And a lot of this movie is just Lila trying to drive Norman crazy to the point of using her own daughter for that. And
Do
then
you
it
think it
kind of
drives
blows up
her
in her
on,
face.
throws her under the bus a little bit? Like,
I like it. That's also a point of contention. It was for critics at the time because this wasn't a particularly liked movie when it came out, and a lot of critics
I'm
were the mindset.
shocked.
Well, a lot of critics were the mindset that Lila Loomis, and to be fair, is this kind of important stepping stone in what we think of as the modern final girl and female protagonists in horror. Somebody who kind of helps save the day and is a bit more proactive, and it is certainly important historically, and I don't want to bash that. And of course, the actress, um,
Is that the same
Vera
actress from
Miles.
the first?
It is. So I believe we get two actors back from the first one. Anthony Perkins as Norman, obviously, and Vera Miles as Lila, which is really cool. So I get that Lila's important or whatever in the context of that first movie, and compared to other movies in the decades that follow it, I just don't find Lila that interesting in the original. So I'm cool with it. I kind of like this dark turn for it. For me, it makes her more interesting. But I know that didn't play for everyone back in
I'm
the day.
fine with it. But I'm also of the mindset that I wouldn't mind if we have to keep making Scream movies. At some point, Sydney finally is the one that snaps. So like, I'm not opposed to a Final Girl. I like going that other way, and I don't care enough about Lila in the original to be like, oh, they ruined her character. Um, and we don't do that often.
We don't, but I think why it works for me too, and why you kind of need that extra twist at the end is I would think it would be going too far if we had Lila killing people. Because she's not aware that there's murder. She's just concerned with driving Norman crazy. And
She is made aware at some point, though.
yes, and she is very flippant about it. Like, well, who cares if Norman did or didn't do it? Like,
Mhm.
lock him up. Like, because she is consumed by vengeance and just wants him locked up. But I think for me it works because we don't go that extra mile of having her be a literal murderer.
Mhm.
Again, this kind of blows up in her face at the end, and again, what she's putting her daughter through is real risky and messed up. And the stuff you hear about from her daughter's perspective, it's like, oh, it's kind of there's weirdly some parallels to like Laurie and her daughter in Halloween 2018 that
I could see
I
that
feel
them
like
looking at this.
because they do talk about like self-defense classes and kind of growing up kind of paranoid and having that overly controlling, overly protective mother, but then is now putting her daughter in this crazy weird situation. But she does have a gun. That is an important thing that comes up. And Norman's smart enough to know, like, oh, that's for me, isn't it? Like, all right, you're scared of me. You're protect me yourself. I get it. So they at least have that. That she gave her daughter a gun to protect himself, but still, it's kind of nutty. But I think because Lila isn't literally killing people, I don't think they throw her too far under the bus.
Mhm.
And then you get Lila meeting Mother, and that's maybe my favorite kill of the movie. It's just so out there and insane.
It's the
How
best
did you
one.
respond to that? It's so good.
Oh, because I was worried at first. Because when you get to the first kill, that like greasy
With
hotel
the
guy,
yeah,
it
with
looks
the
really
scummy.
bad.
Yeah, it doesn't look great.
So it's like,
They
oh,
get
is
sliced
this
across the face.
is this what we're gonna be in for? And then you get to that one, and it's just like the knife in her mouth, and I was like, holy
Yeah,
shit!
shit.
Well, this is an '80s movie.
Yep. It's funny that you say that now because I don't know. Compared to a lot of those movies, I think this at least has a degree of restraint, except for a couple of scenes. Because then when you
No,
get
because
to
I mean, the
Psycho,
knife in the mouth is really the only one where I was like, oh, like we're
it's
going.
super graphic. Yeah. Yeah. But don't worry, when you get to Psycho 3, that goes full 80s sleazy. And your reaction to that will be interesting. No, like I said, I like this movie as a tragedy. Nobody really gets what they want. Norman kind of gets away with it, even though he doesn't do anything wrong until the very end. Because the idea is like in this movie, Norman doesn't kill anybody until the very end, and that's when you know, okay, he's completely snapped. He's
Mhm.
fallen back, and it's all these other fucking characters' fault for it. And I
Well,
think Aaron
Lila,
Sorkin's really
you
selling
said nobody gets what they want, but Lila gets what she wants. She just has to die first.
it. Yeah. Yes. Also, I mentioned it briefly up top, but Robert Loggia is in this movie as Norman's doctor, and I like him a lot. He's not a scummy kind of antagonistic doctor. Like this movie is actually kind of pro psychiatry, which is nice.
Yeah,
I
which is
thought it was
interesting because
refreshing.
I feel like in any other movie, he would be kind of the like scummy, like Friday the 13th Part 7. That
Yeah, he's in this for the
psychiatrist.
money,
Yeah.
for the notoriety. Yeah, but he
Um,
actually believes in Norman maybe too much, like because again, another character where things end very badly for him, and that he probably he goes too far in trying to solve the situation on his own, but he believes in Norman. You know, he's actually there for him, and again, it just doesn't work out. But I don't know if you recognize that actor. He's been in a bunch of stuff, but I think of him
I'm
as the general in Independence Day.
I'm
I didn't know
looking
if you
at
recognized him or not.
I'm looking at his filmography. I don't recognize him, but it made me laugh because I missed Independence Day 1 on his filmography.
Hmm.
But he was in Independence Day 2.
Oh, God, I'm shocked he lived that long.
It's a
Oh no, that must
post.
have been one of his last movies.
He
Oh, that's unfortunate.
has 4 movies that are released posthumously,
Posthumously, got it.
posthumously, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
And that's the first one. Imagine being in Independence Day 2, the most boringest movie ever made.
Oh, I've never seen it.
I have,
You'll
unfortunately.
make.
No, I can't sit through that again.
But yeah, I like him a lot. Again, I
And
like
then am
Vince
I
Cleo.
am I correct in assuming that this is all the same location from the first movie, or did they have to rebuild this?
No, they had to rebuild everything.
That's
Um,
crazy because it looks the same.
they do an excellent job. And then what's funny is one of the issues they ran into when they were building the house was, oh, we don't know what like color the wallpaper was because it's a black and white movie. Like there's some information they just didn't have, so they just winged it. They guessed, they're like, well, green makes sense. And then mid production, they were able to get somebody on who like worked on the first movie to like visit the set for a day and was like, yep, you nailed it. That's the right color. And they were like, oh shit, cool. But yeah,
with
and I
with color, like I'm glad they thought of that, but I don't know if anybody would have noticed because, like you said,
right.
the first movie is black and white. I don't know what fucking color the wallpaper is.
Hmm. But I know there are like props and things that they were able to get out of storage, especially particularly in Mother's room, where a lot of just like furniture and little things were like, oh shit, this we still have this. Okay, cool, just went in there. It has a really natural continuity with that first movie. Like you could watch these back to back, and everything lines up pretty well. The returning
I would
actors
also say
help.
you could watch this one almost on its own. Um,
Yeah, for sure. And one cool thing in Mother's Room. If we ever do a commentary, I'll point this out to you. But when we first go in Mother's Room, everything's in shadow, everything's dark. You get a little bit of a silhouette of Alfred Hitchcock's shadow, like in the corner, if you're looking for it. So they kind of snuck in
oh, that's
a bit of
fun.
a Hitchcock cameo because this was pretty well after he died. And when this was being made, it was super controversial. People were pissed. Like, what the fuck are you doing? Why are you making a Psycho sequel? Very similar to the reaction to when they were making a remake in the 90s. The difference is this went over okay and was kind of a hit. The 90s remake was not.
I'm sad. I want to see this movie remade in the Psycho 90s continuity.
Okay.
Can you imagine
Vince Vaughn's still
Vince?
alive. He can do it.
Let's do it.
The timing works. It's over
Let's
20
do
years
it.
later.
Vince Vaughn doing this. It has to be a shot for shot remake, but worse somehow.
But to your point
And
though
we'll
about
get
this being,
Gary Doberman to do it.
oh god, oh, kill me. Uh, to your point though about this being watchable, disconnected from the first one is, I think the opening flashback's really smart because
Remember
we
the
are
shower scene?
yes, it's very remember the shower scene. That's our opening scene. But I think it does a really good job at segueing. I love the opening credits because we get the prologue with the shower scene, and then we freeze frame on the house, and we transition into color. And it's very natural. You don't even really notice it. It's just like, oh, right, we're in color now. And then the main theme kicks in, and I love the main theme. But to me, that's, and again, a real point of contention for critics at the time of, ugh, you're really gonna remind me of Hitchcock's masterpiece in this sequel? How dare you? It's like, okay. But it's relevant for this story though. Like Marion's death specifically is kind of what this whole story revolves around. So I think they justify that choice. And opening with the shower scene, that is the only time in this movie you get the music, like the iconic psycho stabbing music.
Easy for you to say.
Not easy at all to say. uh, we don't do that again for the rest of this movie. It has its own score, and I love it. It's very melancholy. It's very sad, but I think this movie has a lot of restraint in callbacks and repeats of the original. It's like, no, no, no. This is the stuff that matters. That's relevant to the story we're telling here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if they opened with Arbogast's death of him falling down the stairs, it'd be like, why are we doing this?
It's surprisingly sophisticated for a decades later sequel that takes place in the 80s. Like I imagine this under, someone else. We'll use Sean Cunningham as an example, where that would just be like a cheap exploitative. Remember Psycho?
Mhm.
This isn't, which I think is the biggest shock. I'd watch this again.
Yeah, sure. I like the mystery, and for me, what kind of pulls this whole thing together is Anthony Perkins' performance. He's really good, and has
Mhm.
to do something very challenging in making you sympathize with this guy again, and you're rooting for him. You know, he really sells it.
Yeah.
He seems like a good guy. He's just doing his best. Oh, one of my favorite scenes early on is when they're when he's first in the house with Mary, and again, this plays so different when you rewatch it because she's making really weird calls where she's like asking for a knife and stuff, and he's like, "Oh, I'm all out. I don't have any cutlery." Like he's really trying to hold it together, but it's not easy.
No, he does. He does nervous really well, but it also doesn't feel like the same. Oh, I've done something bad. Nervous. It's I don't want to be that person anymore. Like I
Yes.
do believe it. Up until the end, he does want to be redeemed and like move on with his life.
And the tension really ramps up in the back half when other characters are just playing mind games with him too much. Like when Mary puts on the outfit in front of him and is trying to talk to him as mother, and Lila's been calling him on the phone, pretending to be his mother. It's like just too many people have just gotten in his head, and are fucking with him. Where you
Mhm.
buy it when he just completely breaks at the
Yeah.
end.
Yeah.
I also wanted to mention as a sequel, though, this is completely unrelated to the book Psycho 2, which came out like just a couple years earlier, written by the same author as the original.
Oh, I
And the
didn't know that
first
was a
Psycho,
book.
yeah, the first Psycho, I mean, it's one of those books where it comes out like a year before the original movie, so people just think of the first movie, not the book. But it's a pretty faithful adaptation. It sticks pretty close to it. The second book he writes in the early 80s, I guess because he caught wind that they were making a sequel, and his book is about Norman breaking out of the mental institution because he hears they're going to make a movie about his life, and it's Norman goes to Hollywood to kill people making the movie or something. I've never read it. I've heard it's very meta and weird, and was
Make
meant to be
that
like
movie.
it could be
Make that. You
interesting
know what? Screw the shot for shot remake. Make that the sequel to Psycho '98.
with Vince Vaughn still.
No, Vince Vaughn is a must.
Yeah, it's not a bad premise, but I know it was meant to be like a satire of or commenting on like the modern 80s gory exploitive slasher movies. So I've
Which
never
is
read it.
funny because if
Um
that book came out a couple years before this
mhm,
movie is like '83.
yeah.
They haven't even gotten to like the gory, super gory slashers yet.
Uh, I guess not the mainstream ones as much. In the early '80s, there was a clear divide between like the mainstream slasher movies, like the Friday ones, and then the really sleazy, low budget, not
Yeah,
as
but
widely available stuff. But yeah, that
unless
is interesting.
I'm sure there's stuff out there that I don't even know about. But I didn't think any of that started until later in the '80s. Because we're only on
Yeah,
Friday 3 at this point, if even that.
I mean, context is a factor. Like, I know
That's
Halloween
true.
2 was a pretty gory movie at that time in 1980 and
Which is
or 81,
hysterical
and
in
that's
hindsight.
yeah, that's pretty tame now. But then I think the movies you're thinking of are stuff like Hellraiser, which is late '80s
Well, I'm
and
even thinking of like
so
something
much
like
more
the
shocking and weird.
Prowler. I don't think
Yeah,
even like the Prowler had come out yet.
probably not. That's probably like around '83.
Yeah, because Friday 4 is '84, and like we hadn't even gotten Nightmare on Elm Street yet.
Yeah, for sure, and that's a big
I
one.
because I always
Well, and
forget how late like Nightmare is.
yeah, and Nightmare though really shifts us to more, supernatural slasher movies, more fantasy stuff, not just guy in a mask with
Again,
a knife.
yeah, I mean, fuck Friday. Even Friday was like he's a zombie now.
Yeah.
All right, Robert, we have hit 30 minutes. And honestly, just on a first viewing, I don't have a lot more to say, but I wanted to see if there was anything else you wanted to discuss.
Yeah, just a couple points, just because we didn't really mention this in the setup. This is directed by Richard Franklin, whose work I'm not familiar with. His other big movie is Road Games. It's Jamie Lee Curtis. I think that comes out like a year before this, but I still didn't
Sorry,
see it.
who are we talking about? The writer
Richard Franklin, the director. He
for
does
Psycho
Road
2?
Games.
Psycho
Yeah,
2 is Tom Holland.
It's written by Tom Holland. Let me fact check that.
Oh, okay. No, you're
Yeah.
right. Directed by Richard Franklin. Sorry, I knew Tom Holland was involved, but for some reason I
Mhm.
thought he directed it.
Oh, okay, got it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Richard Franklin.
Tom Holland writes this, and then we'll go on to write and direct Fright Night, which is one of his most popular movies, and then he directs Child's Play, the original.
Mhm. Which is great.
Yeah, so
Oh no. Richard Franklin produced The Blue Lagoon. Have you ever seen
well,
that?
I think I've heard of it.
That's a very strange movie. It's two like teenagers stuck on an
Yeah,
island.
yeah, I'm aware of its
Uh
reputation.
yeah, I've seen it. I wish I hadn't.
I don't think it qualifies for this channel.
Uh I I don't think that should qualify for any channel. That movie gets uncomfortable. I don't know how old they were when they were filming that, but the ages that they're saying they are, some of that stuff shouldn't be on screen.
That's correct. But yeah,
Uh,
he did a bunch of movies though, but like I said, I haven't seen. But Road Games, I've heard is good. Jamie Lee Curtis, one of her early '80s kind of
yeah,
thriller movies. But then, of course, Tom Holland, does a bunch of stuff. So, like I said, they
yeah,
got a
and
really good
Spider Man.
team. He's now Spider Man.
We should
Good
also
guy.
mention cinematography is done by Dean Cundy.
Yes, and that goes a long way. I love the look of the
No, because
movie.
this movie looks great.
It
It
does.
has
I
that
will.
like I don't want to say stock '80s, but I've never been able to put my finger on it. But there's something about the way '80s films look
There's
that
a
I
grit
think
to it.
really enhances the slasher, and
Mhm.
we've lost that. Like I really like Friday 2009, for example, but it's got this very sleek,
Yeah.
clean look that's something's missing.
And I think this does a really good job in matching like the atmosphere and the camera work of the original. I would be curious to watch a black and white edit of this movie just to see how
Mhm.
well it would pair with the first one, and I think it would be even harder to tell like how much distance there was between them, because I think it does a really good job lining up with it. And then Psycho 3, which we will cover at some point, is the one that's directed by Anthony Perkins and written by someone else. And that one, is very stylish, and I love the look of it. But that one goes full '80s sleaze and weird, and it's bizarre and was not particularly well liked when it came out. But that one's like a coin toss for me on how much you'd like it. I could see you liking it more than this one, or being your least favorite so far.
I will tell you,
Having
the
to read it,
poster is
it's a
a
coin
work of art.
the poster's amazing. Norman Bates is back to normal, but Mother's off her rocker again. One of my favorite
That's
taglines.
beautiful.
It's
And
so
then
good.
Psycho 4.
That is the made for TV one, and it's not bad. There's good things in it.
That's kind of the tradition I'm finding with a lot of these older slasher franchises. By 4, you're direct to DVD, or not slasher, horror. Psycho did it. The Omen did it.
Hmm.
There was something else. There was something else that did it. I can't remember. But it's always the fourth one is direct to TV. Although I am curious about the fourth one because Henry Thomas is in
Henry Thomas is on that. Yeah, he's young Norman, and he's pretty good.
that. Oh, that's
And
really interesting then.
yeah, dude, Henry Thomas. People got to sleep on this. Okay, so he played young Norman Bates, and he also played Jack in Doctor Sleep. Like two of the
Yeah.
most iconic horror movie characters.
Well,
ever.
and you know
It's
what's
great.
funny? I didn't hate Omen 4 as much as I thought I would. It's not great, but
Well, in Psycho 4 2, it should be noted, it was a Showtime movie, so it was rated R. There's no commercial breaks. It is like a notch above what you typically think of as a '90s made-for-TV horror movie. Like it's quality. It's got more going on for it. But we were talking about like the sets and the locations. It's either Psycho 2 or Psycho 3. I'm not sure, but like if you were to go to Universal Studios Hollywood today, and they have the Bates Motel there and the house, which I've been to many times. It's super cool. It's either the one from Psycho 2 or Psycho 3. I'm not sure. Um and then Psycho 4 was shot somewhere else completely and just didn't use the Universal backlot for some reason. I don't know why. But it's either
Psycho 4
Psycho 2
also
or
has a
Psycho.
really lame poster.
Oh, it does. Yeah.
Before the
absolutely.
terror can end, see how it all began.
Yeah, 4 is unique in that it's like a half sequel, half prequel. You get Norman Bates as an adult, played for the final time by Anthony Perkins, and then you get flashbacks of him as a kid. So
And that's
it's
the other thing
interesting.
I find interesting, just because that is a concept I'd like to see more slashers do. Like that's what I like about, like, say, Rob Zombie's Halloween,
Hmm.
is that it is kind of, for lack of a better term, a slasher epic, where it's not just his post psychopath life, but like how he gets there, his childhood. Um, I
And
wouldn't
then
mind seeing somebody try that with Friday.
yeah, for sure. I think you could do something really cool and kind of scary and more grounded. And then Halloween 2 was Rob Zombie's attempt to dealing with like trauma and the aftermath of the
And
slasher
it's
attack. It's just,
terrible.
yeah, it's debatable if you see it, but we'll get
No,
to it.
the problem with Halloween 2, Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, is that I can't stand a single character in it.
Uh-huh.
And it's characters
That's
that
the
I
problem.
liked in the last one.
Yeah.
Anyway, this has gone off the rails. So I'm following your lead on this because, you know, this is your pick. Was there anything else that we should discuss?
I think we hit all the major bullet points other than just I will say, like this movie, even though it's not about the kills, it does have a considerably higher body count than the first one. There are two great kills. We already mentioned Lila's with the knife. That one's amazing. And then the one at the very end, it's so dark and funny. And I just, with the shovel, man, like it's such a great surprise the first time you watch it when he hits her with the shovel. Like, because you think he's going to poison her. It kind of fakes you out because you think, oh, he's probably going to poison her or do something kind of, kind of sly. And then he grabs the shovel and just hits her back in the head. And it's so shocking, but it's great. And like I said, I love the status quo this movie ends on, where everything's full circle. Mother's back, Norman's crazy, he's running the hotel, but it feels earned. It's such a great
You were
companion
winning
piece
me
to the
over
first
on
one.
the ending. I still don't like the retcon, but I'm more okay with that last, like, 10 minutes than
It,
I was.
yeah, I mean, like I said, when you rewatch it, you're kind of paying attention to certain
It
elements. You're
should
like,
be
oh,
noted for anybody watching this either live or after the fact. I literally rolled credits and then we went live. I have not
Yes.
had time to digest this movie or process it. I am doing it as we talk, which I think is fun in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of my favorite mysteries while you're watching it is Norman's getting all these phone calls from Mother, and you're not sure, is this in his head? Is there someone on the other line talking to him? It's all the above. And when you rewatch it, you get a pretty good sense of when he's going crazy, when it's Lila messing with him, and when it's literally his mother, Mrs. Spool, at the end talking to him. Like the movie kind of pays attention and is pretty smart about the writing and like, okay, this is when Norman's going nuts, and this is when, oh no, there's actually somebody on the line
Mhm.
messing with him. But it's funny though, since you're still hung up on the retcon, which I get. You know, it's the thing I have kind of my biggest reservation with. This isn't a major spoiler for Psycho 3, but since we're on it, that movie does retcon the ending of this, where they
What's this,
because
Halloween?
yeah, okay. So the writer of Psycho 3 also did not like that twist and retcons and says, "Oh no, that was Norman's aunt, but she was just crazy and wanted him for herself." So again, it's not really retconning the events of these two movies. It's just saying, "Okay, that actually wasn't his mother though. That's just his crazy aunt."
I
Because
mentioned the
okay,
CW, and I've realized why. That is literally a Smallville episode.
it
Do you
is.
remember the
It's so
episode where the woman claims to be Clark and Lex's
yep.
mom?
Yeah.
It's just that.
It's just that. I think where it doesn't like piss me off or ruin these movies for me, uh, even disconnected from that though, I think you could still read the ending as this is still an unreliable character. Uh, the idea is just okay, madness just runs in this family. So I'm okay with some of the backstory stuff not lining up or being inconsistent or this character says this, but actually this happened. Because at the end of the day, it's like, well, these characters are all crazy and they're unreliable narrators, so I could still roll with it. And it can just kind of be what you want it to be. So yes, according to Psycho 3, that is not his mom because we were on it back, but it's fine. Just don't worry about it. it's
Mhm.
it's so hastily done and weird in that movie. Though I should say with Psycho 3, it's made just a few years after this, and there is some really nice connective tissue. It's like the same locations. They bring the actor back who plays the sheriff, who I think is kind of goofy but kind of fun. He's just seems like a nice guy who really believes in Norman. And then of course Anthony Perkins is back, obviously. So there is really nice connective tissue between Psycho 2 and 3. Psycho 3 just goes full Looney Tunes, 80s weird, sleazy slash like Giallo movies were a big influence on Anthony Perkins and kind of informed his approach with the third one. So they're really interesting movies. I don't think everything in that movie works. I think it's not as good as this, but I could see you liking it more. Again, it's 50-50, but it'll be
I'm
interesting when I
curious to
retime.
I'm curious to finish the franchise. If I sat through all four Omen movies, I could sit through four Psycho movies.
You absolutely can, but so I guess my final question to you now is because I know you're not the world's biggest Psycho fan, like I am. Which movie do you like more of these first two?
I think Psycho 1 is probably a better film, minus that,
The
memed
exposition.
on exposition.
Yeah,
I would probably put this one on over Psycho
you're not alone on that. A lot of people love this movie, as do I. I'm glad you liked it because I wasn't sure where you were going to land on it, but I'm glad I made you watch Psycho 2. I
1.
enjoyed
Yeah,
talking about it.
I'm glad too. So, did we do a rating when we did Saw 2? I don't remember.
I don't remember either.
This is a
If I
review,
remember,
so we'll just say that. What would you give this out of 5?
I should probably go higher, but for some reason right now I'm at a 4.5 out of 5 currently with this
Oh,
movie. I
okay.
love it.
I'm
Four
at a
and a half.
4. I'm at a 4.
Cool.
Which,
Yeah,
for
that's
reference, I
respectable.
give Psycho 1 a 4.5. So, like, they're neck and neck.
Nice. Yeah, it's one of
Uh,
those weird things where it's like, I mean, I gave Exorcist 3 a 5, and I think that's a more flawed movie than this, but whatever. It's my ratings. It's all about how I'm feeling in the moment.
so I've been teasing you with this all week. and it's funny enough, you gave me the idea. My pick is a commentary on Doom 2005.
Oh no!
So that's what we will be doing in 2 weeks from now.
You're breaking up. I think I'm losing you. I think I gotta go. No, it's
I am the only person on the planet that loves that movie, and I'm gonna convert Robert live on stream.
you like it more than Psycho. This is on record.
That is just true. All right, Robert. Last thing, just because fuck it, we'll do it live. You had mentioned doing something else tonight, so we have two options.
Okay.
We could do House of the Dead because it is still streaming.
Where's it streaming on?
Amazon.
Okay, I might have ads on that, but we can try to make it work.
Or we can do that.
Dead.
Yeah, it's House of the Dead. Or we can do that physical media thing that you wanted to do with your collection. I personally am leaning more towards House of the Dead because I think that'll be a lot of fun.
You know what? You kind of sprung that on me, but I'm down.
It popped into my head halfway through the review, and I was like, "I'll bring this up at the end."
When is the sweet spot of okay? What we got to capitalize on something to do our epic House of the Dead commentary. Like we need a lot of prep and timing to get that one right.
Yeah. All right, so give us what?
I need 10 minutes.
Yeah, give us about 10 minutes, and we'll be back with a commentary on House of the Dead, everyone's favorite UA Bowl film.
And you still need to make like a thumbnail and stuff. So
yes, that.
But yeah, I'm done.
All right. Have a good night, everybody. Thanks for watching, and if you liked this video, consider hitting that